Welcome back, dears. Today I will explain the sixth lesson in your supplementary textbook. I Want Something in a Cage. It is a very good story that is depicting the importance of freedom in our life. Okay, and here we can see Mr. Purcell, who is having a pet shop, and in a fine day, what happened? A strange customer came to his shop and has done something, and that is very strange for Mr. Purcell. And now let's start it. Mr. Purcell did not believe in ghosts. Nevertheless, the man who bought the two doves and his strange act immediately thereafter left him with a distinct sense of the uncanny, as though behind his departed customer there had lingered the musty smell of an abandoned haunted house. So already I have told you Mr. Purcell is having a pet shop, and one fine day a stranger visited his pet shop, and all of a sudden everything was happening in a strange way. Okay, and Mr. Purcell did not believe in ghosts, but after the man who bought the two doves have left his place, he is having a sense of uncanny. Uncanny means something unusual, something strange is going to happen. And when his customer has left his place, his pet shop was similar like an abandoned haunted house, like a ghost house. Mr. Purcell was a small, fuzzy man, red cheeks and a tight melon stomach. Large glasses magnified his eyes so as to give him the appearance of a wise and a genial owl. He owned a pet shop. He sold cats and dogs and monkeys. He dealt in fish food and bird seed, prescribed remedies for ailing canaries, and displayed on his shelves long rows of ornate and gilded cages. He considered himself something of a professional man. In this paragraph, we can see the detail of Mr. Purcell's profession. He is a very small, fussy man having red cheeks and a very tight melon stomach, somewhat like Kuber. Okay, you can imagine the image of Kuber, and the thing is that he is wearing only large glasses. Okay, and his large magnified glasses is giving him an appearance of a wise owl. And he used to sell the cats, dogs and monkeys, and even used to sell the fish food and bird seed. And sometimes he is able to prescribe the medicines for the canaries. Canaries means a small bright yellow bird that is good for singing. Okay, and in his shop we can also see very long, ornate and glided cages, and for him he is always a professional man. Mr. Purcell considered himself as a professional man. He is too dedicated in his job. A constant stir of movement pervaded his shop, whispered twitters, sly rustling, squeals, cheeps, and sudden squeaks. Small feet scampered in frantic circles. This is the scenario in his shop. When we are visiting a pet shop having different animals and birds over there, it will be always noisy. There can be a sheer movement of disturbance in the pet shop. The same way we can see in Mr. Purcell's pet shop. So now we can see in the pet shop the animals and the birds are always making sounds. It is a very noisy environment over there, and sometimes they are frightened, bewildered, and blindly seeking. Across the shelves pulsed this endless flicker of light, but the customers who came in said, "Aren't they cute? Look at that little cage. They are sweet." And Mr. Purcell himself would smile and briskly rub his hands and empathetically shake his head. So for Mr. Purcell, he is always in a scenario where it is very noisy. It is a hectic schedule for him. But whenever the customers are coming, when they are looking through this cages, to these animals and the birds inside the cages, for them, it is very cute. They are looking so cute and they are very sweet. And Mr. Purcell also agrees with them because he cannot deny it. Okay, and he just agreed with everyone and will smile towards a comment. Each morning, when the routine of opening his shop was completed, it was a proprietor's custom to perch on a high stool behind the counter, unfold his morning paper and digest the day's news. As he read, he would smirk, frown, reflectively purse his lips, knowingly lift his eyebrows, nod in grave agreement. He read everything, even advice to the love learned and the detailed columns of advertisements. Here we can see the daily routine of Mr. Purcell. Again, he is a proprietor mentioned in this paragraph, and after opening the shop, he used to sit on a high stool that is kept behind the counter, and there he will read the newspaper. He will read every nook and corner of this newspaper, and according to the emotion of the news given in the newspaper, we can see the emotions in his face as well. And he used to read everything, even the advices given to the lovers, and even the advertisements that are not related to him. It was a rough day. A strong wind blew against the high plate glass windows. Smog filmed the wintry city, and the air was grey with a thick frost. So here we can see the specialty of a single day. It was a very rough day. It was not a smooth day. It was not a lovely day. It was a rough day, and we can see the strong wind was blowing against the high plate glass windows, and it was fully covered with smog, and the air was grey with a thick frost. Having completed his usual task, Mr. Purcell again mounted the high stool and unfolded his morning paper. He adjusted his glasses and glanced at the day's headlines. Chirping and squeaking and mewing vibrated all around him, yet Mr. Purcell heard it no more than he would have heard the monotonous ticking of a familiar clock. So this is a rough day. Everything was happening in an unusual way, but for him it was a usual day, and he was just doing his usual task. And after opening the pet shop, he just sat on the high stool. He just unfolded his morning paper. He adjusted his glasses and was reading the day's headlines. And the total environment around him was very noisy, but for him it is so common. It's a very boring it is similar like the monotonous tickling of a familiar clock. Monotonous means very boring, tiring. For him it was normal because he is adjusted to this noisy scenario. There was a bell over the door that jingled whenever a customer entered. This morning, however, for the first time Mr. Purcell could recall, it failed to ring. Simply he glanced up, and there was a stranger standing just inside the door as if he had materialized out of thin air. The storekeeper slid off a stool. From the first instant he knew instinctively, unreasonably, that the man hated him, but out of the habit, he rubbed his hands briskly together, smiled, and nodded. "Good morning," he beamed. "What can I do for you?" Here we can see a strange customer entered his pet shop, and there is a bell that is kept over the door, and whenever someone is opening the door, it used to jingle, but this time it failed to ring. The bell hasn't jingled, and when Mr. Purcell looked up, he saw there is a stranger standing just inside the door, and he's just like a person who is being materialized out of thin air. And the storekeeper slid off his stool. Storekeeper means Mr. Purcell. He just stood off his stool, and the first look itself, he understood that the strange customer is not interested to be in this pet shop. But Mr. Purcell is not having any other options. So what he did, he just made a fake smile on his face and just wished him first of all good morning, and then asked him the question, "What can I do for you?" So right now we can see there is a strange customer inside Mr. Purcell's shop. The man's shining shoes squeaked forward. His suit was cheap, ill-fitting, but obviously new. He had a shuttling glance and close-cropped hair. Ignoring Purcell for the moment, he rolled his gaze around the shadowy shop. Here we can see the description about the strange customer. He hasn't even asked the permission to Mr. Purcell to enter the shop, and he was just continually walking over there, and his suit was very cheap and it was ill fitting, means it was not for his body, it was a little bit loose one, and he obviously it was a new suit, and he had a shuttling glance. Shuttling glance means it is constantly looking to and fro, and his hairs are closely cropped. And he just ignored Purcell for a moment, and he was just looking all around the pet shop. Shadowy shop in the sense means pet shop. A nasty morning, volunteered the shopkeeper. He clasped both hands across his melon-like stomach and smiled importantly. I see by the paper we are in for a cold spell. Now, what was it you wanted? The man stared closely at Mr. Purcell as though just now aware of his presence. He said, I want something in a cage. Something in a cage? Mr. Purcell was a bit confused. You mean some sort of a pet? I mean what I said, snapped the man. Something in a cage, something that is small. I see, hastened the shopkeeper. Not at all certain that he did. His eyes narrowed gravely and he pursed his lips. Now let me think. A white rat, perhaps? I have some very nice white rats. No, said the man. Not rats, something with wings, something that flies. A bird, exclaimed Mr. Purcell. So right now we can see what is the need of the strange customer. When the strange customer entered the pet shop, he hasn't asked a permission to Mr. Purcell, but he should be always having a smiling face. As a shopkeeper, as a proprietor of the shop, he should always behave properly to the customers. And the same was done by Mr. Purcell. And he just asked the man, the strange customer, what he wants. And he just mentioned first that he wants something in a cage, but he doesn't he was not clear about what he want. So Mr. Purcell was giving him some options, and first option was a white rat, but he denied and he told that he wants something with wings and that is able to fly. Then Mr. Purcell understood that obviously a bird is having wings and it is able to fly. A bird is all right. The customer pointed suddenly to the suspended cage which contained two snowy birds. Doves? How much for those? $5.50 came the prompt answer, and a very reasonable price. They are a fine pair. $5.50? The man was obviously crestfallen. He hesitantly produced a $5 bill. I would like to have these birds, but this is all I have got. Just $5. Mentally, Mr. Purcell made a quick calculation which told him that a 50-cent reduction he would still reap a tidy profit. He smiled magnanimously. My dear man, if you want them that badly, you can certainly have them for $5. I'll take them. He laid his $5 on the counter. Mr. Purcell tottered on tiptoe, unhooked the cage and handed it to his customer. The man cocked his head to one side, listening to the constant chittering, the rushing scurry of the shop. That noise, he blurted, doesn't it get you? So right now, the customer is very particular that he wants something in a cage that is having the wings and is able to fly. Then Mr. Purcell told him, I'll give you a bird. Then the customer looked all around the pet shop and he found a pair of doves. Okay. And the cost of the doves was $5.50. But he was having only $5 at his hand. So what he did, he just told to Mr. Purcell that I don't have 50 cents more. I'm just having $5. And for Mr. Purcell also, it was a reasonable profit for him, because even if he is selling it for $5, it will not create any loss to him. So he agreed, okay, I'll give you for $5. And he just unhooked the cage and handed it to his customer. And the man looked at his cage from one side to another, and he was constantly listening the chittering sound of those birds, and he was getting agitated hearing all these sounds. Noise? What noise? Mr. Purcell looked surprised. He could hear nothing unusual. The customer glared. I mean, all this case stuff drives you crazy, doesn't it? So the man So here the man was getting agitated hearing the noisy stuff inside the pet shop, but for Mr. Purcell it was a normal situation. He was not feeling anything unusual in his shop. Mr. Purcell drew back. Either the man was insane or drunk. He said hastily, yes, yes, certainly, I guess so. Listen, the staring eyes came closer. How long did you think it took me to make the $5? The merchant wanted to order him out of the shop, but oddly enough he couldn't. He heard himself dutifully asking, why? Why? How long did it take you? The other laughed. 10 years at hard labor, 10 years to earn $5.50 a year. It was best. Purcell decided to humor him. My, 10 years. That is certainly a long time now. So the strange customer has already shown his agitation towards the noisy situation inside the pet shop. But for Mr. Purcell, it was a very usual situation. And now the strange customer is asking to Mr. Purcell that whether he is aware that how much years of toil is needed for him to earn $5. And the answer was so surprising fact for Mr. Purcell that he had taken 10 years to earn $5. That is, he used to get only 50 cents per year. And for that, he has to do a great toil. And Purcell was not interested to hear all these things, but as a shopkeeper, he has to entertain the customers. That is why he doesn't ask him to get out of the shop, but instead, he just listened to what the customer was telling. Right now, we can see the strange customer was describing about the toil he had done in order to earn $5. And he is continuing, they give you $5, laughed the man in a cheap suit, and tell you not to get caught again. Mr. Purcell mopped his sweating brow. Now about the care and feeding of your dogs, I would advise. So right now we can see we don't know who are they. But they used to give you just $5 and a cheap suit, and they will give you an advice that try not to get caught again. But Mr. Purcell was not interested to hear all these stuffs, but he was worried about his doves, and he was gonna to tell about the how to care and feed these doves. But what the man has done, bah, the man swung around, means he was not interested, he just rejected, like, shut your mouth, and stalked abruptly from the store. Purcell sighed with sudden relief. He waddled to the window and stared out. Just outside, his peculiar customer had halted. He was holding the cage shoulder high, staring at his purchase. Then, opening the cage, he reached inside and drew out one of the doves. He tossed it into the air. He drew out the second and tossed it after the first. They rose like wind-blown balls of fluff and were lost in the smoky grey of the wintry city. For an instant, the libertator's silent and lifted gaze watched after them. Then he dropped the cage. Here we can see the action done by the strange customer after purchasing the doves. Okay, so when Mr. Purcell was ready to describe about the caring and feeding of these doves, what he has done, he just rejected his talks and he just moved out of the shop. And for a while, Mr. Purcell was looking at him, what is gonna to do. And there he had seen the man stopped there for a while and he just looked at the doves inside the cage, and he opened the cage and he just made the doves fly free in the sky. Okay, he doesn't like these doves to be inside the cage. He just gave them the liberty, the freedom. For a while, the strange customer, was also looking at the doves that are flying in the air. But after that, what he has done, he just dropped the cage. He shot both hands deep inside the trouser pockets, hunched down his head and shuffled away. The merchant's brow was puckered with perplexity. So desperately had the man desired the doves that he had let him have them at a reduced price, and immediately he had turned them loose. Now why? Mr. Purcell muttered. Did he do that? He felt vaguely insulted. For Mr. Purcell, what this strange customer has done was totally an uncanny situation for him. He felt that the strange customer was deeply interested in his doves, and that is why he had given him even the deduction of 50 cents. But what this man has done immediately after buying this doves, this lovely doves, what he has done, he just lost them. And what happened with him? Why he has done like this? And he was even feeling, did he really mean the same? And for Mr. Purcell, it was like a great insult. So this is all about the lesson, and now we have to assume some things. See, in the beginning it is been written that the man was having the close cropped hair. So when you can see a prisoner who is being imprisoned in a jail for some years, their hairs are always closely cropped. So this man was having the closely cropped hair, and he just told that for 10 years hard toil he just earned $5, in the sense that in the jail, if we are doing the meager jobs or the hard jobs, we will be paid with a meager amount. A very meager amount will be given to the prisoners. Likewise, he can be also a prisoner who is being imprisoned in the jail for 10 years. And he has also told that they give us $50. They, in the sense, means they can be the jailers or the policemen. Okay, so here we have to assume that the strange customer was a prisoner who has been imprisoned for 10 years, and he was clearly aware about the need of freedom in our life, the need of liberty in our life, and he just wanted to make someone enjoy this freedom in the life. That is why he just gave freedom to this birds, to this two doves. So this is all about the lesson, and I hope you understood completely. And if you have any doubt, please clear it at the earliest. Thank you.